The cargo bay smelled like rust and oil, and I almost didn't check the last container. I was tired. My shift had ended 2 hours ago, and I only stayed behind because the scanner flagged an irregular heat signature near Bay 19. Probably a broken cooling unit, I thought. Probably nothing. It wasn't nothing. I pried the container door open with a crowbar, and the smell hit me first. Something sour, like fear has its own scent. Then I saw her. A girl, if you could call her that. Her skin was pale blue-gray, almost like ash, and her eyes were too big for her face, the way a frightened animal's eyes look too big. She had thin arms wrapped around her knees, and there were marks on her wrists where restraints had been. She flinched when the light hit her. I worked cargo docks on the edge of trade space, where alien freighters stopped to refuel and resupply before jumping deeper into the core systems. Most of what passed through was machinery, minerals, sometimes livestock. I had heard stories about other things being moved too, things nobody talked about openly. I had never actually seen one of those stories until that night. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low. "Hey, it's okay." She didn't understand me. Or maybe she did and didn't believe me. Her species wasn't one I recognized, though I had seen enough alien traders to guess she came from somewhere outside the main trade routes, somewhere with less protection under galactic law. That usually meant one thing: places like that got raided. People like her got taken. I looked at the manifest clipped to the container. It listed her as biological cargo, Unit 7. Not a name. Not even a species designation. Just a number. Something in my chest went cold, and then hot, all at once. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about my job, or the freighter crew who would notice a missing unit, or the fact that I had no idea what I was going to do with a frightened alien girl in the middle of a supply dock at 2 in the morning. I just knew I couldn't close that door again and walk away. "Come on," I said, holding out my hand. "You're not staying in there." She stared at my hand like it might be a trick. I didn't blame her. I stepped back instead, giving her room, and gestured toward the open door behind me, the one that led out to the access corridor and, eventually, the open dockyard beyond the fences. It took her almost a full minute to move. When she finally climbed out, she was shaking so hard I thought her legs might give out. I took off my jacket and put it around her shoulders, not touching her, just draping it there. She flinched again, but she didn't pull away. "There's a gap in the east fence," I told her, even though I doubted she understood a word. "Nobody watches that side after midnight. Past the fence there's a transit line that runs to the lower settlements. People there don't ask questions." She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes moved across my face like she was trying to memorize it, or trying to understand why a stranger would do this for nothing. "What is your name?" she asked, in broken trade language, her voice barely above a whisper. I almost laughed, except it didn't feel like a laughing moment. "Doesn't matter," I said. "Just go, before someone comes." "Why do you help me? You want nothing?" I shrugged. It was the only honest answer I had. "Didn't feel right, leaving you in there, that's all." She didn't say anything else. She just nodded, once, like she was filing the moment away somewhere important, and then she slipped into the shadows between the containers, and was gone. I stood there for a while after that, staring at the empty container, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The freighter crew would notice. There would be questions, maybe trouble, but somehow, none of that felt as heavy as the alternative would have felt, closing that door and walking home like nothing happened. The freighter left the next morning without incident. Nobody came looking. Maybe Unit 7 wasn't worth the paperwork of a formal complaint. Maybe the crew just marked it down as lost cargo and moved on. I never found out, and honestly, I didn't want to know badly enough to ask. Life went back to normal, or as normal as it gets on a trade dock at the edge of nowhere. I loaded crates. I checked manifests. I went home to my small rented room above the parts shop and ate whatever I could afford that week. I didn't think the girl would come back. Why would she? She was free. She had no reason to return to the place where she'd been a prisoner, even for a moment. 4 days later, I was wrong. It was near closing time when I noticed someone standing at the edge of the dockyard, half hidden by the shipping crates stacked near the fence. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked different, stronger somehow, though also more tired, like she had traveled a long way and hadn't slept properly in days. She was still wearing my jacket, though it hung looser on her now, like she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. "You," I said, walking toward her carefully. You're okay? She nodded, though something in her expression told me okay wasn't quite the right word. There was a heaviness in the way she held herself, like she was carrying something invisible on her shoulders. I came back, she said, her trade language better now, more practiced. I said I would repay you. You don't owe me anything, I said. I told you that already. You do not understand, she said, and her voice cracked slightly. Where I come from, a debt like this is not small. When someone gives freedom and asks nothing back, it is the greatest gift a person can receive. My people have a custom. We do not let such gifts go unanswered. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing, and she reached into a small pouch at her side and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Her hands were trembling as she held it out to me. Please, she said, take it. I unwrapped the cloth slowly. Inside was a small carved pendant, made from some kind of pale stone I didn't recognize, etched with symbols I couldn't read. It was beautiful, in a simple way, clearly old, clearly worn from years of handling. This is, I started, but she cut me off gently. It was my mother's, she said. It is the only thing of her I have left. Something about the way she said, have left, made my stomach twist. Where is she? I asked, though part of me already suspected the answer wouldn't be good. The girl was quiet for a moment, looking down at the pendant in my hands, like she was saying goodbye to it all over again. She was taken with me, she finally said, on the same ship, in a different container. I did not know until after you freed me. I went back for her. My chest tightened. You went back? To the ship? I could not leave without trying, she said simply, like it was the only choice that had ever existed. I followed the transit line you told me about, found others from my world hiding in the lower settlements. They helped me learn where the freighter was headed next. I got onto the vessel before it left the system. I didn't even know the word for what that was. Reckless, brave, impossible. I found her, the girl continued, her voice steady, even though I could see the effort it took to keep it that way. She was weak, very weak. The crew had already marked her as unfit for sail, which meant she was scheduled to be removed. I felt my jaw clench. I could not save her in time, she said. But I was with her. At the end, that matters more than anything else could have. I stood there holding the pendant, unable to find any words that felt big enough for the moment. She had gone back into the very place that had held her prisoner, risked everything, all so she wouldn't leave her mother to face that alone. And somehow, after all of that, she still found her way back here, not for safety, not for help, but to give me a piece of the only family she had left, because in her culture, that was the only way she knew to say thank you. I can't take this, I said quietly. This is too much. This should stay with you. It is not too much, she said, shaking her head firmly. It is not enough. You gave me my life back, and you asked for nothing. Where I come from, that never happens. Kindness always has a price. Everyone wants something, but you did not. I didn't do it for a reward, I said. I did it because it was right. I know, she said, and for the first time since she'd returned, something like a smile touched the corner of her mouth. That is why the gift matters so much. You did not do it to be repaid, so the repayment means more, not less. I looked down at the pendant again, turning it over in my hands, feeling the weight of everything it represented, not just an object, but a mother's memory, a daughter's grief, and a debt she had traveled across the stars to settle, even though I had never asked her to. What's your name? I asked, finally. You never told me. Sevi, she said. Sevi, I repeated. I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you, she said, and her eyes glistened, though she didn't let the tears fall. She would have liked knowing that someone in this galaxy still does good things for no reason. She always said humans were strange that way. I almost laughed at that, despite everything. Strange how? She said humans help even when it costs them something, Sevi said. Other species help when it benefits them. Humans help because they cannot stand to see suffering, even suffering that is not theirs to fix. She said it would either make your species very powerful or very hunted, maybe both. I didn't have an answer for that. I just held the pendant a little tighter. Where will you go now? I asked. There is a settlement forming, she said. Others like me, escaped, free, with nowhere else to belong. We are building something there, a home of sorts. You could stay here, I offered, though I wasn't sure what here really meant, or what I was offering exactly. Sevi shook her head gently. My place is with my people now, but I will not forget this. And I do not think they will either, once I tell them what one human did, expecting nothing in return. She turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the dockyard, looking back at me one last time. Take care of it, she said, nodding toward the pendant in my hand. It carries more than stone. I will, I promised. And then she was gone again, disappearing into the dark the same way she had the first time. Except this time, I understood exactly what she was carrying with her, and exactly what she had left behind with me. I stood there long after she'd vanished, the pendant warm in my palm from her hands, thinking about debts that are never asked for, and gifts that cost more than anyone should have to pay. I thought about her mother, a woman I never met, dying somewhere among the stars, and about Sevi, risking everything just to be there when it happened. I thought about what she said, that humans help even when it costs them something. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't, not for everyone. But that night, standing in an empty dockyard with a stranger's grief resting in my hands, I understood something I hadn't understood before. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness travels further than you could ever imagine, and comes back to you carrying weight you never expected to hold. I kept the pendant. I still have it today, and every time I look at it, I remember a girl named Sevi, a mother I never met, and the quiet, terrible cost of a gift given freely, from someone who had almost nothing left to give.